ahead and get started. My name is Jasmina Tacheva. I'm an assistant professor at the iSchool in the applied data science program. And I'm really happy to be here. I know you've heard a lot about data science and AI today, but I want to just see how people are feeling right now in terms of what we know about AI, what have we learned about what data science is and what the role of science in our society is. So I want to start with the following question. We know that the power of AI is undeniable, but can someone give me an example of that? Why do we consider AI to be so powerful? Is there any technology that you can think of and you can point to that embodies this for you, the power of AI?
The Amazon group that uses AI, so it tracks people who are picking items up and it automatically builds them.
That's a great example. So Amazon Go, an example of how technology is being used to enable you to shop without really using any sort of a checkout process, the way we formally know it, right? So great example. Anyone else?
Themselves.
Exactly, self-driving cars. So how do we feel in the room and online about this example of Tesla's self-driving cars? Is that an example of AI? Yes or no? What do you think? Yes? Do we know what form of an AI is used behind the project of self-driving cars? Any ideas? Reinforcement learning, maybe. Deep learning, maybe. All right, so I want to show you my example of why I think AI is powerful. I know it's a little small, but this is just Microsoft AI accomplishments that are stated for a couple years back. So we can just imagine that right now what's happening is even more powerful than the examples listed, but just a couple of them state that there are many different areas of human life where technology and artificial intelligence in particular has reached human parity. Now, can someone figure out what that means? What does it mean to say that, for example, in the area of object recognition, of being able to use recognition technology to identify an object, AI has reached human parity? How do you understand this?
AI has reached the same level as humans.
The same level as humans, exactly. So according to these stats, there is AI technology right now in existence that can achieve 96% accuracy, meaning only 4% of wrongly or sort of misclassified examples. Pretty good, right? So it's undeniable that AI is really powerful nowadays. But I want to show you something else, because with great power comes great responsibility. We're familiar with that statement from Spider-Man, right? So I want us to reflect on what exactly responsibility means to all of us. Can someone try and give me a definition of what it means to be responsible? How do we understand that? And it doesn't have to be a technical example, just from your own. All right, to offer assistance to people who may need it. That's an example of a responsible action. Anyone else? Excellent. Knowing the true value of things. Responsibility, the concept of responsibility, comes from the Latin word for responding to someone, right? And this has to do with being held accountable for our actions too, right? Knowing that it's not a one-way street. Whatever actions we're taking in the world reflect back on us, and they put us in relationship with others around us. So being responsible means that we are being held responsible and accountable for our actions. All right, so when it comes to AI in particular, the way we understand AI responsibility and responsible AI is built on these two prongs. Number one, we can understand responsible AI as AI tools that are responsible. And we'll see in a little bit what that may mean. But there's also a second part to it, which means that we're not just focused on building responsible AI tools, we're also focused on building AI responsibly, in a responsible manner. So there are these two sides to this. So let's figure out more about why we need AI to be responsible. What's the role of responsible AI? Why responsible AI? If AI has done so much good for the universe already, and this is just a small preview of how experts, market experts, evaluate the market by 2035. They say that it's going to dramatically increase profitability in most industries that we know, some areas achieving an increase in profitability of about 84% in education. And again, this can be understood in relation to the baseline, which is if that particular industry was not using AI tools, they would be at, let's say, 0. So just by virtue of applying or sort of incorporating AI tools into this industry, they're expected to achieve 84% increase of that from the baseline of not using AI. So clearly, there's a lot that AI has already done for all of us in the sense of making the world a better place. So then why the need for responsibility in AI? Can anyone think of a reason why we might need responsibility? There could be bias. Okay, so what that means is that it may not work as well for everyone, right? There might be people or areas in which AI doesn't perform quite as well. So here's an example. I'll start with a funny one. And again, kind of small, but can someone figure out what this is showing us? Why do we call these adversarial examples? Sounds pretty scary, right? What does that mean? These are the enemies of AI systems. Why? If you're trying to build an AI system that recognizes mushrooms and is able to identify different kinds of mushrooms, the slightest imperfection about an example that you show to this AI system may make it classify this as not being a mushroom, right? So this is just one example of coming back to what you brought up in terms of AI bias. The most simple way in which we can understand AI bias is as an error in classification. In this case, what is clearly a mushroom to us as humans, it doesn't present any challenge at all. It's quite challenging for the AI system. So it misclassifies that object. So this is one example of AI bias, a classification error. But there are others. Does anyone know what the meaning of this is? What happened at Amazon a few years ago? Has anyone heard of how Amazon decided to use AI in order to speed up the hiring process? Exactly. They wanted to figure out a way to identify the most successful candidates for the job. So that particular AI system involved parsing through, if you think about it, thousands of resumes with the goal of picking the most successful ones, right? The candidates with the resume that would indicate the greatest possibility for success. Does anyone know what ended up happening when Amazon implemented this AI system in their hiring process? It was biased towards men. Can you say a little bit more about that? Exactly. There was, so another form of bias, not so much just classification error, right? But full-blown gender bias in the sense that resumes that were authored by women were pretty much disregarded and ignored by the AI system. Why is that? Does anyone have any idea? Was the AI system sexist? What happened? Exactly. So this is the secret of AI, right? AI is trying to predict the future. It's trying to identify the most successful candidates for the job. based on historical data. Makes sense? So the historical data for Amazon as a company at that point in time looked like predominantly male workers, male employees at the company, which means that when you feed the model with this kind of training data, of course, what it's going to learn to identify are other men, right? Not women. So women were discarded by the model based on the training data that the model was exposed to learn from, right? Which was, again, the historical situation at Amazon at the time. So this is yet another form of bias, and there's more. The same company, Amazon, when it trained an AI for facial recognition, misclassified a bunch of US politicians as criminals. So it associated mugshots in existing databases with living politicians. So these are just examples of how AI may go wrong, which again, it's not like they contradict what we just saw here, right? That's not what happens. These things can coexist. So the good parts of AI and where AI may go wrong can coexist. This is why we say that the more powerful the AI technology, the greater the benefits that we can reap from it, right? But also the greater the risks. So there's always this trade-off between benefits and risks. Now, responsible AI is trying to turn this from a trade-off, which means if you want more benefit, then you're also taking on more risk. It's trying to turn it from a trade-off into a situation where it's a win-win. We can maximize the benefits, but we can also at the same time minimize the costs. We can minimize the ethical risk associated with that. So I want to show you two sets of, let's see what you would call these. What are the words that you see on the screen? How would you describe them? These are two sets of metrics. Anyone else? Would you like to have these as a person, as a human being? Could we then call them values maybe? So here's the question. We have these two buckets of values, right? And now granted, they're a little bit different from each other. So if we were to associate one of them with humans and the other one with machines, how would we go about labeling these? Which one would be the machine side? Which one would be the human side? Let's start with the one that starts with accuracy. Humans or machines? So that leaves us with humans for the other one. So yes, this is not to say that we can't strive for accuracy if we're human, right? It also doesn't mean that computers can't strive for fairness just because they're not human. But what it means is that when we design computational systems, fairness, empathy, morality, these are things that are not embedded in these systems unless we specifically instill them into the computational systems that we're building. So by definition, these systems are optimization models. They strive to optimize things like accuracy, like precision. This is how they work. We could also ask them to optimize things like empathy and honesty and fairness. But again, this needs to be a deliberate decision on the side of humans. And so this is why we say that AI may not be ready to fly solo yet. What does that mean? That AI systems may not be ready to be unleashed without any human control whatsoever. We need to have a human in the loop. Not make decisions only based on what the AI system is telling us. That's a really great point. So a lot of AI researchers in the realm of ethics and responsibility say precisely that it can be used in or sort of in combination with human decision-making, but should not yet be left alone to make decisions for us. All right. Now, this leads me to my next point, which is we've heard about algorithms a lot today. But what I want us to think about is that these AI systems, regardless of how complex they are, in essence, are socio-technical systems, which means that they're composed of the hardware and software. Undeniably, there's a technical aspect to them, but there's also a great portion of sociality that goes into them. And how do we understand that? AI systems are built by someone, right? For someone. AI systems often arise in organizations, which is just a lot of humans working together. So AI systems inevitably incorporate the values that we as a society, and more specifically that we as data science teams have, right? So it's important to reflect on those and not just on the technical aspects of AI. So what I want to show you is that AI biases of the kind that we started with, the ones where we talked about errors in classification, they're just the surface of a big iceberg, which continues underwater. And ultimately, biases that manifest themselves as classification errors may have their root cause in the humans who build them, right? And that's not to say that the people building AI are bad, nothing of the sort. It just means that we as humans have our own identities, which means that we only always have a partial view of the world, right? If we have an identity that doesn't exactly correspond to the identity of the intended user of our technology, chances are that we may have a blind spot or two or more and cannot exactly anticipate all the needs that our potential users may be having, which means that there is a value in diversity, in entertaining diverse viewpoints and identities. And so what's a way in which we can address that? Through responsible AI. Well, the first definition that I offered of responsible AI, which is making available AI tools that are responsible. This only covers the top, the tip of the iceberg. So in order to dig deeper and surface other potential problems that may happen, we need to also point to the second definition, the second part of the responsible AI definition, which is designing AI tools responsibly. So let's talk a little bit about how this can happen. To the first point, offering an AI tool that's responsible. This can happen by relying on certain principles, by incorporating safety, transparency, replicability, explainability, and other such principles into the technology that we're building, making sure that the algorithms that we're exposing users to can be understood not just by us, but also by the people using them. So building up that AI literacy. But this, just embedding these principles may not be enough because this only addresses, as we saw earlier, the tip of the iceberg. So we need to go a step further. And in my opinion, this further step means practices. So yes, we can have the core principles that we all agree on, but those should be accompanied by a set of practices that we abide by as well. So what do I mean by ethical and responsible practices in AI? Now, I'll show you examples of two such practices that I think it's important for data scientists to cultivate. The first one being the practice of considering context. Has anyone seen this image before? It's from 2018, when a data scientist by the name of Kate Crawford worked together with a visual artist from the Balkans to create this pretty extensive supply chain system, if you will, of a simple, seemingly simple AI system, AI product that many of us may have at home right now. Now, let me unpack a little bit of what's happening here, and then I'll ask you to try and guess which that product might be. So the idea behind this project is to map out the anatomy of an AI system by realizing, as we said earlier, that AI systems are socio-technical objects, which means that they're built not just the physical, technical aspects, but also a lot of social aspects too. Now, these two, the creators of this project, go a step further and want us to think about having the artifact, the technical artifact in our hand. Also means that the artifact is coming from somewhere. So if we think back to all the very natural resources that were involved in making the production of this artifact possible, we can construct this fairly complicated picture of what it takes to produce a tiny little thing that can speak back to us and tell us what the weather is going to be like today. So I gave you a hint. Do you know what this might be? Alexa, yes, it's the Amazon Echo. So yes, they tried to dissect, deconstruct Amazon Echo and show all the different stages through which labor, natural resources, and data need to be combined together in order to produce something seemingly that simple, sleek and simple, right? But there's a lot of complexity behind the sleek design. That's what the authors of this project want us to think about. And so let me introduce you very briefly to a second one, which is the principle of design justice. Design justice says that we should always ask ourselves, as we're building these algorithms, who can benefit from the design that we're offering, but also who participated in the design process in the first place. What was the team that built an AI system like? Was it fairly homogeneous? Or was there diversity? Were there diverse points of view that were part of this? And also, and most importantly, not just our project may benefit, but also who may be harmed by it. Again, going back to this duality that I talked about earlier, that there are lots of benefits, but also risks that need to be taken into consideration. So benefits and harm go hand in hand. Anytime you want to maximize the benefits, we also need to think about minimizing the potential harm. All right. So in conclusion, I want to show you two visions of the AI future. The first one belongs to Elon Musk. Does anyone know what happened just last night? There was pretty frantic tweeting out of the Elon Musk corner. What was that about? Does anyone know? He finally acquired Twitter, so only God knows what's going to happen next. But he made this statement about AI and the future of AI. How would you characterize it? Is it an optimistic vision of the future? Neutral? Pessimistic? Pessimistic. What does he think of the future of humans and robots living together? Pretty bleak, right? We're gonna have robot overlords. They're gonna take over, make us their servants or whatever. So this is one potential vision of the AI future. Now, another one is by Timnit Gebru. Has anyone heard of her? One of the first professional ethicists that Google hired and subsequently pretty famously fired. So her vision of AI, despite of the fact that she was witness to how such huge AI systems get developed, such as voice recognition and natural language processing, what are now called large language models. Her vision, despite of all her experiences, still remains positive. But where is the emphasis? With Musk, the emphasis is on the machines. How about the quote that she provided us with? What does she prioritize in this future? Responsibility? Humanity, exactly. So she emphasizes the human element in all this. And I sort of wanted to combine the two because, you know, maybe truth is somewhere in the middle, but I do want us to take this away from my talk, that the future is in our hands. There's no machines that are coming to get us, but rather there is a future of AI systems that are going to be better and better. And so it's up to us to define what better means for us. Is it mostly accuracy? Is it mostly humanity? Is it both? Is it something else entirely? And that's your job as data scientists to figure out. And so thank you. And I'm not sure how we're doing on time, but did I go over? Yes, so we have a few minutes for questions if you have them. But I just wanted to say in conclusion that we are offering a course on responsible AI at the graduate level in the fall of 2023. So I would be really happy to see you there, but help me figure out what our AI future should look like.
Hi, there was a question that was asked online. It says, can you comment on the implication of Wegmans pulling off their new self-scanning app due to shrinkage? How can this be fixed?
Self-scanning app, is that the self-checkout app maybe?
Yes.
All right, so this is a very interesting point that I always try to bring up with my students, which is when we think of self-checkout technology and all that, we try to think of it as making our lives easier, right? The assumption is, or the way that these technologies are being sold to us is that we don't need to wait in line. We can just do it right there and just be done with it. And I'm guilty of using these technologies a lot myself, particularly at Wegmans. But what happens, I want us to just think for a moment of what that technology actually does. It's not necessarily an AI technology in the sense that it doesn't necessarily use very elaborate deep learning processes, but it does something. And this is to disguise human labor, the labor that we all as shoppers perform, and package it as a service that technology is offering to us. But if you think about it, it's really us, the humans, that are doing the work, right? But it's being presented to us as the epitome of tech progress. And so there's actually a term for that. And when we try to build a critical understanding of technology, it's important to pay attention to these things and to have a more critical attitude towards these technologies and see through the hype, right? So this term that I'm talking about, it's a concept called automation, which comes from the French word for false. So false automation, which is, it looks nice, right? On the surface of it, this thing can scan things for us, basically getting rid of the need for a clerk at a checkout line to work for the store, right? But what actually ends up happening is that it's not the technology that's doing the work, it's the humans, the shoppers that are scanning products for themselves, pretty much. Makes sense? So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question really, but I just wanted us to think about what the implications of such technologies are that profess to make our lives easier when in fact they might just put more work on us as a tech user. So one framework that I have been learning about that I think is a good starting point is called consentful technology, consentful tech. And so you may be familiar with the concept of consent from a vastly different context, right? But it gets applied to the development of technology in order to go through the principles of basically acquiring consent from potential users, not when you have already built the technology. So not as an afterthought, but rather as being directly embedded into the very design of an AI system. So I think that's a good point of departure for that sort of thinking. All right, well, thank you for your attention, and I'll pass